She walks into the room and the air shifts. Not because she demands attention, but because she commands it without a word. Her presence is a quiet storm, a force that doesn't need to prove itself. She acts soft not out of weakness, but because true power doesn't need to shout. In a world obsessed with noise and bravado, she embodies the strength of stillness. Her softness is not submission. It's a conscious choice, a strategic grace. She knows that the most formidable power lies in restraint, in the ability to hold back when provoked, to remain composed when chaos ensues. She has mastered the art of presence. Her energy speaks volumes, conveying confidence and authority without uttering a single syllable. She doesn't need to dominate the conversation. Her silence is eloquent, her gaze penetrating. She listens more than she speaks, understanding that knowledge is gained through observation, not proclamation. Her power is rooted in self-awareness. She has delved into the depths of her psyche, confronted her shadows, and emerged whole. She doesn't seek validation from others because she has validated herself. Her worth is not contingent on external approval. It's intrinsic, unwavering. She moves through life with intentionality. Every action is deliberate, every decision aligned with her values. She doesn't react impulsively. She responds thoughtfully. Her discipline is not rigid but fluid, adapting to circumstances without compromising her integrity. In relationships, she doesn't chase, she attracts. She understands that genuine connection cannot be forced, it must flow naturally. She doesn't cling to those who don't appreciate her. She releases them with grace, knowing that her peace is more valuable than any fleeting companionship. She embraces solitude, not as loneliness, but as a sacred space for growth and reflection. In solitude, she reconnects with her inner self, recharges her energy, and gains clarity. She doesn't fear being alone because she enjoys her own company. Her resilience is quiet but unbreakable. She has faced adversity, endured pain, and yet she remains unshaken. Her scars are not signs of weakness but badges of honor, reminders of battles fought and won. She doesn't wear her struggles as a burden but as a testament to her strength. She leads by example, not by coercion. Her influence is subtle yet profound, inspiring others to rise to their potential. She doesn't seek followers, she cultivates leaders. Her legacy is not built on control, but on empowerment. In a society that equates loudness with strength, she redefines power. Her softness is her superpower, her calmness her weapon. She doesn't need to prove herself because she knows herself. And in that knowing, she finds freedom. She acts soft because she is powerful beyond measure. And true power, the kind that transforms lives and shapes destinies, doesn't need to prove itself, it simply is. She simply is, and that is enough to change the temperature of any room she enters. Because she doesn't carry power like a sword, she radiates it. Not through domination, but through depth. Not by posturing, but by presence. Hers is the kind of presence that disarms the ego and awakens the soul. It doesn't confront you, it reveals you. And that revelation, it terrifies people who've built their identities on control, because she doesn't play their game. She doesn't respond to provocation. She doesn't take the bait of shallow theatrics. She meets chaos with a gaze so calm, so unbothered, it becomes a mirror that reflects back every insecurity, every unhealed wound, every unresolved shadow, not through judgment, but through stillness. Because she has already met her own, she's wrestled her own darkness. She stared into her inner abyss, and instead of running, she stayed. She didn't beg for light, she became it. That's why nothing shakes her now. Not silence, not betrayal, not the empty noise of men who think volume equals virtue. She knows. Real power doesn't rush. It doesn't explain itself. It doesn't announce its arrival. It doesn't demand validation to feel real. Real power listens. It waits. It chooses not from scarcity, but from sovereignty. And when she chooses, it is never because she needs you. it is because she sees you and chooses you anyway. But if you fail to recognize the value of that choice, if you mistake her softness for submission, if you test her boundaries thinking they were made to be bent, she will not explode. She will exit silently, fully, with no part of herself left behind, because she no longer splits herself in two just to fit inside someone else's limited understanding of love. She has outgrown the performance. She has outgrown the apology. She has outgrown the game. Now she watches from within, from above, from the center of her own universe, where she is no longer a satellite orbiting someone else's gravity. She is the sun, and the warmth she offers is no longer available to those who come only to take. It is reserved for the aligned, the aware, the awake, because she acts soft. Yes, but her softness is a filter. It separates the men who recognize sacred energy from the boys who only know how to consume it. And those boys, the ones who mistake gentleness for permission, who interpret grace as weakness, they never see it coming. Because the storm she carries is not loud. It doesn't arrive in fury. It arrives in decision. She decides that silence is more powerful than explanation. That distance speaks louder than confrontation. That peace is more precious than proving a point to someone who has no intention of understanding her. So she lets go, not in bitterness, but in brilliance, because her love was never meant to be a classroom for unteachable men. She's not here to mother your emotional illiteracy. She's not here to interpret your avoidance as mystery. She's not here to call chaos passion. She has grown too wise for that. Now, her softness is her strategy, not to manipulate, but to magnetize. She doesn't chase, she attracts. Not by being agreeable, but by being authentic. And authenticity has gravity. It draws in those who are ready. It repels those who are not. So if she seems quiet, don't mistake it for confusion. She's not unsure. She's not undecided. She's just observing how your words match your actions, how your energy aligns with your intentions, how your presence respects her peace. Because a woman like her, a woman who acts soft not to disarm, but because she's disarmed herself, she doesn't need to test you. Life will do that for her. And she knows the man who is meant for her will not be shaken by her stillness. He will recognize it. He will honor it. He will move in rhythm with it, not out of fear, but out of reverence. Because he has done his own work. He has faced his own shadows. He has nothing to prove, only something to offer. And until that man appears, she will remain exactly as she is, untouched by noise, unmoved by ego, unshaken by loneliness, because she understands what most still don't. There is a difference between being alone and being in alignment, and she will never trade alignment for companionship again, because companionship without alignment is captivity in disguise. And she has already tasted that prison, the one where she had to shrink her voice to make peace, where her intuition was dismissed as overreaction, where her softness was taken as an invitation to overstep. She will not return there. Not for attention, not for love, not even for the illusion of connection, because she knows the cost now. She knows that bending for someone else's comfort is a silent contract with your own self-abandonment. And she refuses to sign that contract ever again. So yes, she acts soft. She smiles with ease. She speaks with warmth. She touches the world with gentleness. But make no mistake, that softness is fortified. It is the result of years spent tearing down the walls others built inside her. Years spent peeling off the layers of shoulds and musts and maybes. Years spent reclaiming her voice from the hands of those who only wanted it quiet, sweet, and agreeable. Now, now she moves in grace, but not for your approval. Her grace is for her, the sacred balm she offers to herself. A kind of self-love that doesn't shout affirmations in the mirror, but walks away when something feels off and trusts the silence that follows. Because she no longer needs closure. She needs clarity. And clarity isn't something she asks for. It's something she becomes. She becomes so clear on who she is, what she values, and how she deserves to be treated, that anything misaligned simply falls away without effort. That's the power of a woman who acts soft but lives from soul. She is not confused. She is not waiting. She is not here to be rescued. She is the rescue for herself, for her lineage, for the quiet army of women watching her, realizing maybe they too don't have to harden to survive. Maybe softness isn't surrender. Maybe it's the truest victory, the kind of victory that doesn't require bloodshed-only boundaries. And now she holds those boundaries with elegance, with ease, with silence, because power doesn't need to raise its voice. Power simply is. And so is she. So is she. And always has been, even when she was doubted, even when she was dismissed, even when she stood alone, accused of being too sensitive, too emotional, too much, when in truth she was just too real for those who were too fragmented to hold her. She carries no bitterness. She doesn't wear resentment as armor. She doesn't need to, because the most dangerous woman is not the one who fights. It's the one who no longer needs the battle. She has transcended the battlefield, not because she couldn't win, but because she understood the war was never hers to begin with. It was always about proving something to people who never even saw her. And now, she no longer performs. She no longer auditions for love. She no longer translates her soul into a language others find comfortable. She speaks in clarity. She lives in integrity. She walks in truth. And that walk, that graceful, grounded, sovereign walk, is what confuses the world, because they were taught that softness is weakness, that femininity must scream to be taken seriously, that tenderness is submission. But she embodies a different truth, a deeper truth. She shows that softness can refuse you, that tenderness can draw a line in the sand with a whisper. That feminine energy, in its purest form, does not beg, does not bargain, does not bend, it chooses. And when she chooses herself, the world rearranges. Because now she is a standard, not a seeker. She is the gravity, not the chaser. And those who approach her will feel it instantly. The unspoken expectation to meet her where she stands, not pull her back to where they're stuck. She doesn't make announcements. She doesn't issue warnings. She doesn't explain her boundaries in lengthy paragraphs anymore. She lets your actions speak. And then she decides, in silence, with peace, with finality, because she doesn't need the world to understand her softness. She just needs the world to respect it. And if it doesn't, she walks not out of anger, but out of love. Love for herself, love for her future, love for the truth that power isn't loud. Power is presence, and she is its living proof. She is its living proof, not through declarations, but through demonstration. She doesn't argue her worth, she embodies it. She doesn't defend her standards, she lives by them. And in doing so, she disrupts every illusion the world had about what a soft woman should be. Because her softness isn't submission, it's precision. It's the deliberate decision to lead with grace when the world expects grit, to offer calm when provoked, to stay centered when surrounded by chaos. And that calm, it unnerves people, because most are only familiar with power that threatens, not power that transforms. Most people can only measure strength by how loud it is, how fast it moves, how forcefully it demands. But she is the kind of strength that doesn't need to compete, doesn't need to dominate, doesn't need to shout over others. She is the kind of strength that draws things in, the kind that compels truth from others just by standing in it herself, the kind that makes you question who you've become and whether it's enough to stand beside her. And if it's not, she will not chase you to change. She will not carry your potential. She will not babysit your evolution. She will let you go with kindness, with dignity, and with an inner knowing that what is meant for her will never ask her to become less. Because becoming less is a betrayal she's already committed once. Once was enough. Now, her life is a declaration, not one shouted, not one broadcasted, but lived quietly and unshakably every day, in the way she says no without guilt, in the way she says yes without fear, in the way she chooses solitude over shallow connection, in the way she creates space, not from scarcity, but from standard. And from that space, something beautiful is born. Freedom, not the reckless kind that runs from intimacy, but the sacred kind that calls intimacy in. The kind that says, I don't need you to complete me. I don't need you to fix me. I don't need you to fill me. I need you to see me as I see myself. And if you can't, I won't fight to be seen, because I'm no longer afraid to be invisible to those not meant to witness my light. She knows now, softness isn't what she does. It's who she is. And being fully who she is, that is the most powerful act of all. That is the most powerful act of all because it cannot be taken, only witnessed. It cannot be touched with words, only felt in silence. It cannot be borrowed, bought, or bargained for. It is earned through war with the self, through nights of unraveling, through years of unbecoming everything she was told she had to be. And now, she is no longer in the business of performance. She doesn't need to prove she's evolved. Her energy tells the story. She doesn't need to convince you of her value, her boundaries, speak louder than her lips ever will. She doesn't need to forecast her moves, explain her distance, or translate her intuition into logic for anyone else's comfort. Because the truth is, she has nothing to prove to anyone who still measures her by old standards. Let them misunderstand her. Let them call her cold when she goes quiet. Let them call her too much when she stands tall in her truth. Let them call her changed when she stops apologizing for existing in her fullness. She's not here for their approval. She's here for alignment. Alignment with her purpose, with her peace, with her people. And if someone can't meet her there, if someone is still addicted to noise, to drama, to power, dressed in ego, then she will let them go with a blessing, with love, with silence, because she no longer fights to be chosen by people who fear what she represents. And what she represents is this: that power can be soft, that femininity can be fierce, that wisdom can whisper and still shake the world. She acts soft because her power is secure. It doesn't tremble in uncertainty. It doesn't overcompensate. It doesn't grasp. It rests. It rests in the knowing that everything meant for her is already on its way because she's finally moved out of the way. She's cleared the clutter of approval seeking. She's torn down the altar she built to external validation. And now she sits on the throne she carved from the ruins of her old self, not as a queen who rules others, but as a woman who governs herself. And in that kingdom of inner stillness, she is both sovereign and sanctuary for herself and for anyone wise enough to meet her without trying to conquer her. She does not need to conquer because she no longer seeks victory over anyone but the past version of herself. And that battle she has already won, not through war, through wisdom. She won by choosing silence over shouting, presence over performance, grace over grasping, And that is what most will never understand, that her softness is not her weakness, it is her weapon. But not a weapon forged in bitterness or rage. A weapon crafted in the quiet hours when she sat with her wounds instead of projecting them. When she stitched herself back together without asking for applause. When she turned down the volume of the world just to hear the whisper of her own soul again. That whisper, it grew. It became a voice, a knowing, a center of gravity so real, so unshakable, that now the storms outside don't reach her. Not because they disappeared, but because she did. She disappeared from the battlefield of people-pleasing. She vanished from the arena of approval. She stepped away from the circus of proving and performing and pleasing. And in that space, in that sacred withdrawal, she emerged. Softer, stronger, more dangerous than ever. Because now, she doesn't react, she remembers. She remembers who she was before the world told her who to be. Before they praised her for shrinking, for being nice, for being easy to love so long as she stayed small. And now, she is not small. She is precise. Every word, every breath, every decision is intentional. She no longer entertains what drains her. She no longer explains what her soul has already outgrown. She no longer fears being misunderstood because she finally understands herself. And that kind of understanding, it rewires everything. It shifts the foundation she walks on. It filters the people she allows in. It transforms her softness from a defense into a declaration. I am not here to be consumed. I am here to be met. And if you can't meet her with presence, with purpose, with power, you will feel the full weight of her absence. Not as punishment, but as prophecy. Because she's not waiting anymore. She's not hoping anymore. She's not bending anymore. She's building in silence, in softness, in strength. So now, she sits not on a pedestal, not on a throne, but on the grounded truth of who she has become. No fanfare, no finale, just presence. Because the most powerful transformations are not loud. They don't scream through the streets. They whisper through your posture. They ripple through your choices. They resonate through your absence from places you've outgrown. And she has outgrown almost everything. Everything that made her explain herself. Everything that made her feel too much, too loud, too soft. Everything that taught her her power had to be earned. Now she knows the truth. She is the power. The softness was never submission, it was strategy. The silence was never confusion. It was clarity. The withdrawal was never weakness, it was rebirth. And now, she walks with nothing to prove. No agenda, no armor, no need to be chosen by the blind. Because the one who sees her won't need to be convinced. He will recognize her not by her beauty, but by her stillness. Not by her softness, but by the strength it takes to hold that softness in a world that keeps trying to harden you. And if he never comes, she will not collapse. She will not compromise. She will continue as the woman who learned that the most sacred kind of power is the kind that needs nothing outside of itself to be whole. She acts soft because her power no longer needs to prove anything. It simply is. She watches you not with her eyes, but with her instincts. She senses what you try to hide behind your tone. She hears the desperation between your pauses. She feels the clinging in your touch when you tell yourself it's love. And the moment she realizes you're afraid to lose her, she starts losing respect for you. Not because she doesn't want to be loved, not because she doesn't feel something real, but because the moment your center starts orbiting around her validation, she stops trusting your core. A woman cannot fully surrender to a man who is already surrendered to her approval. And no matter how gentle she is, how much she says, I want you to open up, how often she reassures you, the truth is, she cannot feel safe with a man who is not sovereign. Carl Jung once said, The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are. But too many men abandon that birthright the moment a woman enters the picture. They trade their mission for her comfort. They shrink their edge to avoid conflict. They confuse compromise with self-erasure. And all of it, every appeasement, every unspoken resentment, every fear disguised as devotion slowly, erodes the very thing that made her attracted in the first place. Your masculine core, your ability to lead, your capacity to walk away if alignment dies, your unshakable commitment to your vision, even if it means standing alone. You think you're holding on to her, but she feels held by a ghost of the man she first made tone, who no longer lives in truth, but now orbits her moods, her approval, her affection like it's oxygen. This isn't about being cold. It's about being clear. Clarity is what creates safety. And the man who fears losing her loses clarity. He stops leading. He starts managing. He stops creating polarity. He starts chasing harmony at the cost of his own soul. And in doing so, he becomes forgettable. Because no woman respects the man who fears her more than he reveres his own path. She respects the man who can hold her heart without handing her his spine. The man who can love deeply, but not desperately. The man who can show up fully, without disappearing inside her. The man who can say, I choose you, but I do not need you to feel whole. Because only a whole man can love without fear. And only a man who's willing to lose her will ever keep her respect. Not because he threatens to walk, but because she knows in her bones that if he had to, he would. Not to punish, but to preserve what makes him a man. His vision, his boundaries, his truth. And that truth, when embodied, becomes a gravitational field she can't explain, but she feels it. It commands her surrender. Not because he demands it, but because he embodies what cannot be manipulated. He becomes the constant in a world of emotional storms. And she feels it when he doesn't flinch, when he doesn't abandon his integrity to please her, when he doesn't shrink in the face of her fire but holds it, breathes through it, meets it with grounded calm. That's what allows her to soften. That's what allows her to trust, because she knows this man does not need her. He wants her. And that distinction, that is everything. Because want is rooted in choice, in freedom, in sovereignty. But need is rooted in fear, in insecurity, in silent, shapeless desperation. And no woman, no matter how gentle, how nurturing, how deeply in love, can truly respect a man who has abdicated his center to preserve her presence. She will feel it before she knows how to name it. That slight hesitation in your voice when you disagree. That anxious yes when your gut screams no. That subtle shift in your energy the moment she pulls away or tests your edge. She will feel that you're not leading, you're negotiating. And she will begin to do the one thing that terrifies you most. She will test you harder, not to destroy you, but to see if what you say you are can actually hold her, to see if the man behind the promise is a pillarer, a performer. Because the feminine needs to trust the masculine spine in order to surrender her storm. And if she cannot trust you to hold yourself, how could she ever trust you to hold her? She doesn't want your fear of losing her. She wants your fearless devotion to truth. She wants the man who knows where he's going, even if she doesn't follow. The man who honors love, but will not betray his purpose to keep it. The man who will walk away not out of cruelty, but out of clarity, because his compass is not her affection. It's his alignment. She needs to feel the weight of that clarity in you. To feel that if love begins to cost you your truth, you will choose your truth. Not because she's disposable, but because you are non-negotiable. And that's not arrogance, that's respect. Respect for yourself. Respect for the path. Respect for the woman who deserves to be loved by a man who refuses to become her pet, her puppet, or her emotional hostage. She doesn't want to dominate you. She wants to feel you can't be dominated. That even in her wildest fire, you will remain unmoved, not cold, not distant, but centered. That when she burns, you won't flinch. You won't shrink. You won't collapse into apology just to quiet the storm. You will witness it. You will contain it. You will stand so deeply rooted in your own soul that she remembers who she is just by touching your presence, because she doesn't want your control. She wants your containment. And the difference is this. Control comes from fear. Containment comes from masculine power. And that power does not beg to be kept. It does not beg to be loved. It does not fear being alone, because it already walks in wholeness. She cannot respect a man who fears her leaving, but she will worship the man who could lose her and never lose himself. Because when a man refuses to lose himself, he becomes irreplaceable. Not because he performs perfectly, not because he conforms to her every need, but because he is so deeply rooted in his essence that to leave him is to leave something sacred. She may not even understand why she might resist it, run from it, even resent it. But deep in her instincts, she feels it. This man is different. He's not chasing her approval. He's not negotiating with her moods. He's not bending his truth to avoid her storms. He's anchored, and that anchor gives her something her nervous system has craved her entire life: safety. Not the safety of control, not the safety of comfort, but the safety of a man who doesn't flinch when she tests the borders of his being, the safety of a man who can love with an open hand, who doesn't cage her but doesn't cage himself either, who doesn't abandon her but will never abandon his mission. That's the man she trusts. That's the man she respects, because she knows no matter how much she desires closeness, no matter how deep the intimacy, she cannot be the source of his strength. She cannot be the reason he wakes up in the morning with fire in his chest. That has to come from within, from something unshakable, from a purpose that runs deeper than the relationship, from a clarity that precedes her. And she will test that, consciously or not. She will challenge the structure of your being. She will push against your edges, not to break you, but to feel where you begin and where she ends, to feel whether your masculinity is real or reactive. And the moment she senses that you fear the loss more than you value your own alignment, she withdraws. Not always physically, sometimes emotionally, sometimes spiritually, sometimes in a slow, quiet erosion of respect that you won't even notice until one day her eyes no longer light up when she looks at you. Not because she stopped loving you, but because you stopped leading. Not with force, not with bravado, with truth. Truth that is untouchable. Truth that is sovereign. Truth that says, I love you, I choose you, but I will not abandon who I am to keep you close. That's the man she can trust. That's the man she can surrender to. That's the man she cannot stop respecting. Because the one thing she cannot love deeply is the man who fears losing her more than he fears losing himself. And the truth is, she's never truly gone when you stand firm in who you are. Because a man anchored in purpose calls the feminine home not through possession, but through presence. A presence that doesn't waver when she pulls away. A presence that doesn't chase when she needs space. A presence that says, I am here, but not at the expense of myself. This is not emotional distance. This is spiritual maturity. The boy panics when love feels threatened. The man remembers that love cannot be threatened when it is rooted in truth. He knows relationships are not kept alive by control or fear or need. They thrive on alignment. And when alignment breaks, he doesn't collapse, he clarifies. He doesn't beg. He doesn't grovel. He doesn't try to twist himself into a shape she might stay for. He simply asks himself one question: am I still walking in truth? If the answer is yes, lets the chips fall, because he trusts life. He trusts that no woman truly meant for him will ever ask him to abandon his soul to keep her. And if she does, he lets her go with love, with dignity, with clarity, not as punishment, not as a power play, but because he knows the cost of losing himself is always too high a price. You cannot build a life on fear. You cannot build a kingdom on compromise. You cannot build masculine power on the shaky ground of needing to be loved. The woman who's truly worthy of your devotion does not want to be your reason for existing. She wants to be your reward. The man who makes her feel safest is not the one who wraps his entire identity around her, but the one who can hold his center regardless of her. Because if she knows you can walk away, then she finally knows you're not just there out of fear or comfort or dependence. You're there by choice. And choice-free, powerful, self-possessed choice is what unlocks her deepest surrender. That's what awakens her feminine heart. That's what calls forth her trust, her softness, her devotion. Not your fear of losing her, but your fearlessness in never losing yourself. Because when you refuse to lose yourself, you give her something sacred stability in its highest form. Not the kind that controls or contains her, but the kind that liberates her to be everything she is: wild, emotional, unpredictable, because she knows your foundation is not negotiable. She can cry, rage, test, doubt, spiral, and still feel safe. Because you will not be moved from your center by emotional weather. You are not her emotional manager. You are not her fixer. You are the flame that does not flicker. And in a world of men too eager to please, too ready to bend, too lost in their need to be chosen, you stand out. Not because you don't care, but because you care correctly. You care from depth, not desperation. You care from integrity, not anxiety. You care from presence, not performance. And presence is what allows love to breathe. Because true love does not grow in the soil of fear. It grows in the light of freedom. The freedom to leave and the choice to stay. The freedom to disagree and the decision to honor. The freedom to live your truth and still choose us. So when she sees you live in that truth, when she sees you walk it, even when it's uncomfortable, even when it risks her distance, that's when she respects you. That's when she trusts you. That's when she opens in a way she never has before. Not because she's controlled, but because she feels safe enough to surrender. And no woman can surrender to a man who fears her leaving more than he fears losing his path. So let her go, if she must. Not with anger, not with ego, with reverence, with the silent knowing that any love requiring your betrayal is not love, it's bondage. And you weren't born to beg. You were born to build a life so whole, so true, so devoted to something greater than comfort, that if she leaves, she remembers you as the man she never stopped feeling. Because a man who never fears losing her is the man she never wants to live without. But here's the paradox. The more willing you are to lose her, the harder you are to walk away from. Because the man who walks in truth, who doesn't chase, doesn't beg, doesn't fold into whatever shape she needs to feel secure, he becomes unforgettable. Not because of what he says, not because of what he promises, but because of what he is. He's the rare mirror that reflects not only her beauty, but her limits, her wounds, her manipulations, her power. And still, he doesn't flinch. He holds it all, without trying to fix it, without needing it to change, without losing himself in the storm, because he's not there to be consumed. He's there to contain. He doesn't fear the fire. He remembers he's the flame. And when she realizes that, when she sees that no matter how close she gets, she cannot bend you, she cannot pull you from your path, she cannot own you, she doesn't lose interest. She falls deeper, because women are not drawn to the men who orbit them. They are drawn to the men they must rise to meet. Men who stand still while the world spins. Men who do not explain themselves when misunderstood. Men who live with such ruthless devotion to the truth that it awakens the same standard in her. And maybe she'll resist it at first. Maybe she'll leave. Maybe she'll rage at the man who refuses to betray himself just to be loved. But in time, she will know she didn't lose a man. She lost an anchor. And anchors are not easily replaced. So, if you want to be respected, if you want to be remembered, if you want to be the man who unlocks not just her love, but her soul, then stop fearing her absence. Start fearing your own disappearance. Because the moment you vanish from your own truth, the moment you quiet your voice to keep her near, the moment you trade your backbone for her attention, that's the moment you begin to die in her eyes. Not all at once, but slowly, quietly, fatally. So let her go, if she must. But never let yourself go. Not for love, not for approval, not even for the illusion of forever. Because forever means nothing if it costs your essence. She can love you. She can need you. She can adore every inch of your soul. But she can never, ever respect the man who fears losing her more than he fears losing himself. And if she doesn't respect you, no matter how much she says she loves you, no matter how tightly she clings to you, no matter how often she comes back, she will never fully surrender to you. Because respect is the door through which love enters the feminine heart. Without it, everything becomes performance. Everything becomes conditional. Everything becomes a test she already knows you'll fail. Because the moment you fear her leaving, you unconsciously give her the power to define your worth. And a man who gives away that power cannot lead, cannot ground, cannot inspire. She might stay for comfort, for security, for routine. But deep down, she'll know you were never strong enough to stand without her. And because of that, she will never trust you to lead her anywhere meaningful. Because how can she trust a man who can't even stand when she pulls away? The truth is brutal, but it's clean. When you need her more than you need your own integrity, you stop being a man she can follow. You become a man she has to manage. And no woman wants to mother a man she once wanted to melt for. So stop asking how to keep her. Ask how to keep yourself. Ask how to stay rooted when she storms. Ask how to speak your truth when it might cost you her comfort. Ask how to walk away when your soul knows the cost of staying is your spine. And know this, if she's truly aligned with your path, she won't leave when you stand in truth. She'll rise, she'll soften, she'll come closer. Not because you convinced her, but because your clarity did what your words never could. It awakens something inside her that's been waiting for a man unshakable, unapologetic, untamed by the need to please, the kind of man she can finally rest into. And even if she does walk, if she runs, because your power threatens her comfort, let her go. Let her feel the weight of a man who did not cling. Let her remember what it felt like to lose a man who refused to lose himself. Because that memory, that's the echo of a rare kind of power. A power not made to beg, but born to be followed. And that kind of power, it doesn't fade. It lives on in the silence that follows your absence, in the way her body still remembers your stillness, in the way her soul still flinches when another man folds under pressure. She may try to replace you. She may even convince herself she has, but deep down, she'll always feel it. She was in the presence of something real. And real doesn't beg. Real doesn't chase. Real doesn't collapse. Real simply is, that's what you become when you stop fearing her departure and start honoring your own path. You become a force of nature, the storm that doesn't roar but rearranges the ground she walks on, the river that doesn't need permission to carve through stone, the mountain that doesn't move to be more convenient. You become the mirror that doesn't distort to please her ego. You reflect her truth, no matter how uncomfortable, no matter how confronting, no matter how costly, because you love her too deeply to lie. And that's what most men will never understand. The deepest expression of love is truth. And truth doesn't always feel good. It doesn't always sound sweet. It doesn't always keep people close, but it always keeps you whole. And a whole Manoni, who lives with his spine intact, his soul awake, his voice unmutedis, the rarest kind. She may not always choose him, but she will never forget him, because he stood when most men knelt. He led when most men followed. He told the truth when silence was easier. And that kind of man is respected even in his absence. So stand, even if it means standing alone. Speak, even if your voice shakes. Walk away, even if your heart breaks. Because the moment you trade your center to keep her from leaving, you stop being the man she fell for, and you become the man she has to walk away from. Not because she wanted to, but because she had to. So be the man she never has to leave. Not by pleasing her, not by fearing her, but by leading her. And if she can't follow, then let her go. Let her remember the day she walked away from a man who wouldn't bend. And let her feel forever what it means to lose a man who finally, truly, and unapologetically found himself. So when you stand at the edge between keeping her out of fear or keeping yourself out of truth, remember this: she can't respect a man who's afraid to lose her. She may love you. She may miss you. She may cry over you. But if she senses fear behind your touch, behind your silence, behind every moment you shrink just to keep the peace, she will slowly begin to lose respect. And when respect dies, love begins to rot from the inside. Because a real woman, doesn't want a man who clings to her from fear. She wants a man who holds onto himself with unshakable conviction. That man doesn't beg, doesn't control, doesn't betray his soul to preserve a connection. He loves, he gives, he leads with a heart that cannot be broken by the threat of abandonment. And because of that, if she leaves, he still stands, not from pride, but from truth. The truth that real love never requires you to lose yourself to keep it alive. And the man who's willing to let her go after giving his all in integrity is the man she will remember until her final breath. Not because he held on to her, but because he never let go of himself.